While I'm keeping an eye on every player, Wiser controls every room.
Rob, Glasgow this weekend, and a chance to put right the wrongs of what you said, a mixed performance up there, really, wasn't it?
It was a mixed performance because it was one of those weird ones. I think we had quite a good focus on what we wanted to achieve. I thought we put in physically we were fighting, particularly in the first half, but without being probably technically good enough. We dropped an awful lot of ball. We didn't get through phase play. We were probably a bit passive in that I think Glasgow were controlling the gain line better than we were. We had a couple of set piece issues, but nothing too much. But then second half, we could never really get into the game. We had one decent period where I watched us and we were carrying through the gain line. We put together about 5 or 6 decent carries that entered the gain line. And lo and behold, we scored a try. We're back in it, back in bonus point territory. But then the rest of the game, again, we're relatively passive and still making those errors. And it added up to being, we ended up getting nothing from the game. And I think that was a frustration. But at the same time, we've played at Glasgow and not come away with much before, and it's not been the be all and end all of our European season. And we've learned from it, and we've moved forward, and we've achieved good around it. And that's what we've got to make sure we do again. This is a different performance this weekend. I think we're capable of doing it. I think we're on a kind of an upward performance curve over the last 5 or 6 weeks, with Glasgow being the blip, really. And I include the Harlequins game in that because Harlequins are one of the current form teams in the Premiership. They're the current champions. They're playing well. Very few players unavailable. We're at 14 men at half time, and we nearly win the game. We only go behind with a minute of the game left, and that's not a bad performance by any team. And we are actually disappointed we didn't win the game, and we think there's a few things we could have done better. But the real positive about it was our physical stats were fantastic. And when I say fantastic, individually, some players put in physical efforts in that game that we could put on a comparison with any game in any season over their time here. So it's in us. It's just us aligning it and producing it, and it would be a nice week for that to happen.
As a coach, you can never coach that fight. You can coach all the technical parts of the game, but that fight, which you saw particularly second half there last week, has to be a springboard now, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think our challenge is to produce that level of physical output a little bit more consistently. I think in our good seasons, that's what you've seen. You've seen that real easy focus on producing that level relatively consistently. That's probably been the bit that we've not quite got right this year, but we're getting there. And I genuinely think we're getting there. And the players are genuinely making the efforts they can make to make that happen. There's not how do I describe it? There's not a conflict about how we're going to play or how we're going to approach the games. We're pretty aligned. We're probably still getting comfortable with what we're going to do and what the target is, and everything's kind of the focus of everything is narrowing down quite nicely for us. We are getting into the stage where we've got to collect points against Glasgow because no one knows what's going to happen next week. So the teams that are playing, it's in your hands. You've got to collect points. It's getting a bit like that in the Premiership. There's quite a few teams above us now. At the end of the season, if you want to be in the top 4, there's going to be a certain amount of points we've got to collect, and we're going to have to start collecting them from next week, when we go play London Irish. We are getting a nice narrow focus now, and actually that'll be good for us. And actually the challenge of being probably chasing things down a little bit is good for us again as well. And I'm starting to see a bit of enjoyment and a bit of something about the team, and that to me is a real positive.
Rob, you've always stressed the importance of home form, but particularly in a competition like Europe and the way it's set up, you've got to make the most of home form, haven't you?
Definitely, and as I said, the teams that are playing, in some ways the pressure's on us a little bit more. I know that sounds a bit strange, but as an example, we collected 5 points against Montpellier, great, and that bonus point could be huge for us in the shake-up. But we played our game at Glasgow, went ahead. And through our fault, it was our doing and Glasgow's play on the day, we didn't collect any points from that trip. Some teams didn't travel that weekend and they collected 2 each. So we've got to make sure that when our games go ahead, and this game is going to go ahead this week, it's not in doubt, it's not going to be postponed, it's going to happen. Well, we've got an opportunity. We've got an opportunity to collect some points, but we've also got an opportunity to collect nothing when other teams might collect 2 for not playing. we've got to make sure it's in our hands. We've got to take it. That's what sport's about. When you get given the opportunity, you take it, and we've got it, and that's what we're going to talk about. This might be it. This might be the last game in Europe in the pool stages. Let's make sure we take it, and that's how we've got to approach the game.
Are you worried about the uncertainty, not just this week for some clubs? Because, like you say, we're okay, it seems, this week, but next week, going into Montpellier, you don't even know at the moment whether or not you can be playing that game.
I've got my concerns, obviously. I think what happens in the next 24 hours is obviously going to play a huge part, because, we know the scenario. Newcastle, Dean Richards has laid it out. In theory, they should be in France today, but their flight is booked Friday, or they're holding it for Friday. They want some clarity on when they need to be in France, when they should be testing, what the isolation periods are. Everyone is still waiting from that directive. We are the same. We actually don't know what we should be booking to fly into Montpellier next week. At least we've got a few days, but some teams have got zero time at the moment. So there is some uncertainty. There's no point saying there's not. But that's why we've got to kind of zone that out and lock down to what is going to happen. And what is going to happen is this weekend's game, and we've got to approach that as a bit of a be all and end all game, really.
And what are the threat of Glasgow? Obviously, you could have looked at brief footage of the game, but as you said, the Ospreys last week, they performed very well, and under Danny Wilson, they seem to be a very good cohesive unit. Yeah,
well, they've got a lot of good players. A lot of players are used to playing high level rugby, either internationally or Heineken Cup. So it's a challenge. And I actually thought they played very well against us. They were very focused in our game up there. They won a lot of the physical battles, which immediately means you like to win the game. So there's some things we've got to aim to flip. But we've done it in the past at Sandy Park against Glasgow and against other teams. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to create a performance, get the crowd behind us, a bit like the last home game against Bristol. Get the crowd behind us, get them involved, create a level of intensity and passion that probably Glasgow had at their place, and like I say, flip that result on its head.
Rob, team news wise, how are we looking?
Pretty good. We haven't got too many injury issues. Ollie Devoto's still struggling a bit with his hip, so we're still assessing that. That's what's had him out for the last couple of weeks. Johnny Gray's got a little bit of an issue we're assessing through the week, but outside of that, we're looking pretty good. We've had a couple of guys off the last week or so with various illnesses and bits and pieces that are around at the moment, but on the whole, we've got a pretty strong training group.